want to welcome Larry Cohen to our call. Larry wrote an amazing piece. I encourage everyone here to read it. It lays out our strategy, our inside-outside strategy to bring about social change. And that strategy foundationally starts within the Democratic Party. And there's amazing stuff happening all around the country. And Larry's here to talk about what, as this in these times headline says, what the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has planned next. So Larry, welcome. And what do we got planned next?
Great to be with you. Sorry about that. Had to get off of mute. Great to be with you and be with our great staff team and leaders across the country, and great leaders in the Congress like Ro Khanna and the others that we're going to hear from tonight. So, you know, Joseph has always laid out the 4 points of our revolution. We organize around issues. We work in elections, particularly in primaries, which I'll come back to. We transform the party itself. And, you know, we do that by building the movement with allies from other organizations as well. And in many ways, this part of it, transforming the party, and what this article is about, and in these times, is dull and turns people off. And I totally get that. And, you know, I'll talk more about that in a minute, the turnoff part. But I just want to stress at the beginning here that for me, you know, for a lifetime and for all of us, we're motivated by the things we love, the people we love, the fights that are about the people we love and the things we love, whether it's healthcare, for me, workers' rights, an entire lifetime on those fights, the climate crisis, and these other things, elections and transforming the party, are only a way to get the things we love. So I want to be clear on that. I'm not in love with doing this party work. But as Joseph said, decades ago, I came to the conclusion as a union leader at the time, and since then, the Bernie campaign and our revolution, that there's no point, I mean, literally no point in doing electoral politics if we're not going to fight to change the party. If we're not going to fight at least as much in the primaries as in a general election, when we know that, for instance, in the House of Representatives, 80% of the districts are one-party districts. There is no general election. That's also true for the majority in the U.S. Senate. So the only way we get to Medicare for all, the only way we get workers' rights, where organizing rights join with every other nation in the world, the only way we get the kind of policing that Ro Khanna talked about, public safety, really, like every other country in the world, is that we have to build a political movement and then view things like transforming the party as a key tactic. It's not the strategy. The strategy is building the movement around the issues. But the tactic becomes the party has to change on different levels. So let me just rattle those off. You just heard from Ro Khanna about, in many ways, the most exciting level, and it's what I mostly wrote about in this piece and in these times. You can find that at inthes.times.com or on the last Revolution report. There's a link, or in the chat, which is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So think about this. In a year when Democrats lost the majority in the House, we gained 7 more members in the Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That's a net gain of 7. We lost in 11, for example, but the net gain was 7. So we actually elected 9 new ones. And now the Congressional Progressive Caucus, in a formal way, is 1/2 of the Democratic caucus. So in other words, half of the 212 Democrats, just under half, have joined that caucus. But who cares? Well, why do we care? So we take that one example, which Joseph talked about, what we call the dirty deal. It was originally called Manchin's dirty deal, but the Democratic leaders in the White House embraced it as well. So I could call it Biden's dirty deal. And I don't have the time to get into all that. But Jeff Merkley, a month ago on one of our calls, said the Democratic leaders now believe in all energy, dirty and renewable. Well, how do you stop that? That's just one example. How do you stop the giveaways to the pharma industry. Bernie has called out Moderna, charging now $130 a dose for COVID vaccine. How do you stop the military-industrial complex from the most bloated military budget ever? We've got to have a strategy to do it. The best strategy we have, and the one that has worked, not all the time, it's not strong enough, is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That's all about an inside fight inside the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, and then using that push, as you just heard again from Ro Khanna, to push on the Senate, which is another whole story for another night. So number one is the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and linked to it the primary fights to increase their numbers. Any old blue just won't do, and that's an understatement. Most of them, and not most of them, but a huge chunk of them, almost half, are literally corporate Democrats. They're in districts that the Democrats are going to win. And so we started with somebody like Ocasio-Cortez. She knocked off Joe Crowley, who was a leader. That is a very tough fight, grueling fight. But if we don't do those two things, one, build that Congressional Progressive Caucus strategy to win. We won on the dirty deal as just one example. There are more examples. Two, that we're challenging incumbents and running in open seats. Number two, we're going to hear from a great friend of mine, an amazing family in Arizona, Dan O'Neill, longtime leader in Arizona. And you saw it on the screen earlier. My union sister from CWA, Yolanda Bejarano, Yoli as I call her, winning the chair of the Arizona party in a contested election with the new governor supporting somebody else. And she won overwhelmingly. And as Dan will tell us, so did her whole slate. And as he will also tell us, that's years of work, boring from within, as we call it. Boring from within. Years of work to get to that point. Why does it matter? Because she's aligned with Ruben Gallego, who's going to challenge Kyrsten Sinema. Many Democrats in the Senate are going to say, oh, so what? She's an independent. We're still going to back her, just like we back Angus King, Bernie Sanders. They're independents. That would be another longer story about Maine and Vermont. But just sticking on this, we must defeat Kyrsten Sinema. And that means a Democratic Party in Arizona that will go full out to call her out for what she is, corporate hack. That's what she is. And that will mobilize everyday people, unaffiliated voters and Democrats to elect Ruben Gallego. That's just one example. In more than 20 states, most of them west of the Mississippi, our revolution and our allies have now elected state party chairs and other key leaders, like the first vice chair in Arizona, as Dan will tell us. So that's number two. You get involved in the precinct and county level, bore from within, and we have 20 states plus Democrats abroad that now can point to the results of that. All of it is from the first Bernie campaign. That's where this energy, I shouldn't say all of it. That's not fair. Most of it is from the Bernie 2015, 2016 campaign, not giving up and fighting. The third level, where I've been tortured for 17 years, the Democratic National Committee, fighting for change. Why is that worth something? Because coming out of the first Bernie campaign, without, again, lots of details, we were able to push a reform movement in the party to abolish superdelegates from being involved. Those are the DNC members, are not involved in nominating the presidential nominee. If we had had that in 2016, Bernie would have been the nominee. We got rid of that. And then again, 2020 is a longer story of how Biden beat Bernie. But the point being that we're never going to elect, don't make it about Bernie at this moment. We're never going to elect a progressive if 750 superdelegates are there before the first primary election. And so that's only one reason the DNC matters. It also matters. It's supposed to police the democracy in the 57 parties. It's 57 because the territories each have a party, like DC or Puerto Rico, et cetera. They're not doing it. And again, they're not doing it because the White House controls right now, the Biden White House controls the DNC, and they're not interested in the reform movement in New York or New Jersey, where I spent 20 years, or even Pennsylvania, let alone states like Florida, where the corruption is rampant. And it goes on and on. But again, the three levels, the DNC, the state parties, primary elections, the House of Representatives from the primaries to Congressional Progressive Caucus. Finally, the DNC meets this weekend. And that was sort of the trigger of the piece I wrote. And in 2 words, it's a shit show. There's no other way to describe it. And we have about 65 to 75, and it's growing, members of the DNC. And we have many fights we will bring to that meeting, including what's in the article, which is to ban dark money in Democratic primaries. If we don't get the dark money, what I call now the dirty money, out of Democratic primaries, it becomes increasingly impossible to elect the challengers, the insurgents, the progressives in those primaries, and then elect them, whether it's the House of Representatives or a mayor of Akron, who we're going to hear from next, or the city council in St. Louis, where we're so actively involved now. So that was maybe too many minutes, Joseph, but that's what we're trying to do here, is to unite our revolution activists around that program to change the party at those levels, not just one of them, but all of them. And it can start with your own county party, where it's not that hard to get involved and change it.
And so, Larry, let me ask you this. In terms of progressive power within the DNC, you said we've got a block of maybe 65 or so members of the DNC?
Yeah.
Which is remarkable. I think this is probably the biggest progressive bloc we've had
ever.
Which
well,
is
maybe not. Maybe in the Jesse Jackson era. I don't want to go overboard, but certainly in my 17 years there, it's not a close call. In the when Hillary Clinton got superdelegates before the Iowa caucus, the first caucus or primary in 2016, she already had 300 superdelegates voting for her. There was me and a couple others for Bernie. So this number is the most we've ever had, and it's because of the state parties like the Arizona story you're about to hear.
And so that being said, what I think it's important just to underscore the organizing that happens behind the scenes to make this progressive bloc a reality. And it's the same strategy that the CPC has been using, that Megan Green is using in St. Louis. It is slowly, seat by seat, winning power. And at the end of the day, that's what this is. It's kind of a long game. And Larry, just tell us a little bit about that, because as you said, this is kind of the boring, slow sludge.
Yeah.
But it's also the inner sanctum of where the rulers make the rules, right?
Right. And as I said in the piece, I say this a lot. It's the rules, not just the rulers. Even us as activists get enamored with, and it's fine up to a point, with the Ro Khanna or Pramila Jayapal or Bernie Sanders or AOC or so many others, right? There's a lot now. But if we don't work on the rules, we're never going to win. And we're here to win the things we love. I don't want to repeat all that again. We're not here. It's not like, I'm from Philly, so I want the Eagles or the Phillies to win. It's not my team. This is about what we actually love in the world. Way more important than a team winning. So you mentioned Megan Green. She was a Bernie supporter, became a Bernie convention delegate in 2016, was a DNC member. So the top 4 from every state party are automatically on the DNC. And she kept going. And she's an amazing sister. She kept going. She got elected as an older woman, an alderman they call it, but from her area of St. Louis. And then she won a Democratic primary that we were a key force in, our revolution supporters in St. Louis and around the country, who called all our supporters in St. Louis. And she beat a real estate backed candidate, a development candidate in that primary, and then got elected in the general. She's now president of the Board of Aldermen. We can change almost every local government that way. From Somerville, Massachusetts, where our folks were doing that even in 2016 when we started our revolution, to a big city like St. Louis, we can do that at that level because you can knock on doors. It can be face-to-face. You can offset the dirty money. So yeah, let me just stress, the best building block is the county or the municipality, and we fight from there. And when we change our county, change our municipality, we can improve the lives, our own happiness, and the lives of the people we love, just like Megan Green is doing in St. Louis, without getting into all the details on the environment, on better housing, on safe policing, in the city next to Ferguson, Missouri. They've been working on that issue ever since.